Attention. Attention. News of the day. 500,000 blacks, 500,000, have been gathered up and put in what the Rhodesian government of the dread racist Ian Smith prefers to call protected villages, but are nothing less than outright concentration camps. Rhodesia's top representatives in the United Nations last week admitted that they have gathered up over 500,000 black people in concentration camps in Rhodesia. The admission was made by Rhodesian Information Officer Kenneth Towsey in an interview with Internews. It is known that this is the first time that a Rhodesian official has confirmed Amnesty International's estimates on the number of blacks that have been gathered up in recent months, that are held now 24 hours a day, where formerly they were held from dusk till dawn in these governmental camps that are grossly inadequate in water and food. Modeled after the U.S. strategic concentration camps in the U.S. imperialist war against Vietnam, the over 200 protected villages are designed to separate the rural African population from the guerrilla forces of liberation of the Patriotic Front, the Zimbabwe Patriotic Front. Infant mortality in these camps, according to Amnesty International, are 3 out of 4 babies born are born dead, and only 1/2 of the ones that remain alive are able to make it through the first year due to the gross deprivation of food. The United States has great nerve to try to plague, as it is in the news last night again, all television channels, trying to bring in the lethal jugular blows to Synanon, the cooperative, white cooperative at that, because poor people are to have no form of socialist sharing, and all the press beating the drumbeat to finally do away with Huey Newton. Last night, CBS came out, CBS Radio, and put it just exactly where it was. We were socialist. Guyana was moving towards communism, and the attack was gross indeed, spearheaded by the usual enemies who we must never forget. Class enemies of the people, Stoen. Those that have fed them the input that have left in recent times. Class enemy, Katsaris. Stoen has whipped up one $18 million suit trying to plague us. That's why I have to be up night and day strategizing around these kind of offenses against us. The enemy of the people, Stoen, one day will meet justice. That can be assured. After inspiring the Medlocks in a fraudulent claim of $18 million to try to tie up our properties and starve our people there and here and gain notoriety in the vicious capitalist press, he was not satisfied that they had whipped up a defamation suit through Katsaris for $15 million. Maria now is taking the lie detector test to prove that all through her childhood years she was molested repeatedly by this vicious beast, garbed in the sacred cloth of the religious priesthood. He was a member of the clergy, no less, and now the ministerial head of Trinity School in Ukiah. But for the truth, when a socialist speaks the truth, one gets sued. So we now have $33 million of lawsuits hanging over our heads. In spite of their intentions and efforts, they have not been able to get any attachments on our property as of this point. Over these months, miraculously, as much as they've tried to whip up the conspiracy, the welfare department against us, to make false claims, Social Security, to block our checks, we have a lot to remember Mr. Stoen for, and to get the Treasury Department into a frenzied mood that has been added to, the fuel added to by Miss Blakey's allegations of our defensive posture, which we certainly are quite capable of. Nonetheless, the conspiracy goes on. The news does not just rank us now as healers and religious connotations. They call us socialist and say that our enemies live in fear of their lives, that they could die at any moment for attacking us. Certainly all enemies of the people should live in fear. It's amazing that there is not one bit of news in the U.S. papers about these horrible events of over 500,000 blacks in concentration camps, 3 out of 4 dying while they're born due to the starvation conditions of their mother, not enough food to feed the little baby, struggling for 9 months inside the mother, and then the 1 out of 4 that survive, half of those die of starvation in the next months. No, the capitalist press has no time to mention those kind of criminal acts, and U.S. tax dollars actually funded through aid the setting up of these camps, and they were modeled after the U.S. concentration camp hamlets in Vietnam with the help of U.S. military advisors that are presently in Rhodesia, the white racist regime that dominates black people, where there are 18 times more blacks than white, and yet a white government under the fascist, apartheid racist governing in Salisbury, Rhodesia, Ian Smith, dominates that country. It is enough to cause one vomitous to think of the evils of what goes on in the name of capitalism. And they have all this self-righteousness about exposing socialists and trying to make them look bad, headline after headline. There's nothing in the news except Jim Jones, Huey Newton, and the cooperative named Synanon, and now a new wave of attack on Scientology for giving what is clear proof, as we did in the People's Forum, that the Nazis control the international police, the Interpol, the police departments of all the capitalist world, including our own Treasury Department, Customs Department, and other levels of our local and national police, such as the FBI and many local chiefs of police throughout the United Nations. Nazis. I said Nazis. It is a matter of proof. Naturally, when truth is brought out, the capitalist system cannot endure that, and it uses its arm of control, its vicious arm of control, the newspapers, the television, and the radio, to crush those that dare speak the truth. Also, it has been brought to light through a brave reporter from Great Britain that hangings are going on by the hundreds taken from these camps daily. To give you just an example, this reporter, of course, Englade by name, was deported, given only 18 hours to leave the country. Even though he had need of 14 days to wind up his personal affairs, with all the pressure of his attorneys and even the Foreign Correspondents Association of the capitalist world, he got into trouble because he reported just one of the hangings that day. Just one. Let us take a look at what is going on in USA-backed Rhodesia, that USA needs for its chrome supplies, and for years has maintained that corrupt, vicious government in power. Luther Delamony lay heavy and quiet in his cell, listening to the rain, much like this morning's rain, I presume. In a much shorter time than usual, he drifted off into a deep, troubled sleep, brought on by the cheap tranquilizers that were slipped into the evening meals of all those they planned to execute from the village-protected camps. In his last conscious thoughts, he may have suspected he had been drugged, a sure sign that his life was all but over. In the morning, when he awoke groggy and fuzzy-headed, he was told he had but 1 hour to live. Delamony, D-H-L-A-M-I-N-I, like hundreds the day before, met his death at the end of a rope in Salisbury's central prison, a fate that waits all black Rhodesians convicted, framed of playing any role in the nationalist liberation movement for the freedom of the African people that outnumber whites 18-1, yet are dominated by the fascist Ian Smith white regime. Previously apolitical, that means a person not involved in politics at all, labor, Delamony, knowing nothing of politics, was arrested in July 1977 on frame-up charge for recruiting a fellow worker to join Joshua Nkoma's Zimbabwe African People's Union, ZAPU, in neighboring Zambia. Now that is the wing of the Patriotic Front that is not even Marxist-Leninist. As you know, Robert Mugabe is a Marxist, but Joshua Nkoma is merely a nationalist who is seeking only Republican status, just freedom for black people from the gross Hitlerite tyranny of Rhodesia. Delamony's case is typical of those accused of helping the liberationists, despite an automatic appeal that included not only a higher court, but also a special president's commission. The number of sentences changed after the initial conviction is almost minuscule, almost nil, nothing. In fact, it has been 7 out of what has been estimated now at 100,000 murders in the name of law and order, supported by our U.S. military advisors and aid advisors. Our tax dollars have conducted over 100,000 murders of those who merely were framed for desiring liberation in Rhodesia. Official statistics are all but impossible to obtain because the government no longer announces executions, and officials refuse to discuss the issue anywhere in Rhodesia. Justice Minister Hilary Squires asked on the floor of Parliament last month how many persons had been hanged, refused to answer on the grounds a reply was not in the national interest. The USA is a murderous hypocrite for convicting blacks as it does every day. 90% of those that face execution, and new one is now facing, a young man by the name of Turns has just been sentenced yesterday to die in San Quentin's gas chamber in the cold blue room. USA is hypocritical to continue its festival, carnival of human rights, its circus of so-called interest in law and justice, when the only people that ever receive the brunt of the law are those who require liberty, black people and Indians. Anyway, Squires was applauded for refusing to speak about the 100,000 estimated plus murders that he has conducted since early spring last year by the white members of Prime Minister Ian Smith's Rhodesian Front Party. There are none other there except for Elijah Nyandora. The question was dismissed as mischievous and provocative, and the subject is not considered to be a matter for tedious public debate, said the government of Ian Smith that was put in power by monopoly capitalists in USA and Great Britain. Squires' cavalier remark was typical of the attitude of white officials. Foreign Affairs Minister P.K. van der Bijl, asked by a newsman at the Geneva, Switzerland peace talks why the government did not release the names of those executed, replied, "Anyway, it is academic, because they are normally dead after it." And that's the way they can give the finger to world opinion. But U.S. imperialism has no interest in black people's lives. How many have been tortured? How many are living? 1 million, 1/2 million in concentration camps, 100,000 murdered. U.S. has no interest in how many blacks are destroyed by the system every day. And they go through this pious circus of being concerned about Huey Newton and Jim Jones and the other movement, Synanon and Scientology, again only because they register concern because they are bringing out the truth. Jim Jones, of course, is getting most of the attack because he has a greater force to fight them with, more informed people. Even though it's a paltry number left in the United States, they fear even a dozen people that know the truth. There should be nothing but an incensed indignity, a hatred, a passion that goes deep to our soul against that system that holds domination, not only on the lives of our beloved people in the United States, but it has its hold on the throats, strangling and murdering and killing and torturing by the hour, untold tens of thousands. We should hate U.S. imperialism. U.S. reviews African policy. Despondent over the mounting success of liberation movements throughout the continent of Africa, Carter, renegade puppet for the Translateral and Trilateral Commission, the elitist of the monopoly capitalists, has begun a major review of U.S. African policy, or should we say finance capitalism's exploits, U.S. imperialism's exploits. State Department officials announced yesterday, one official made the bogus claim that with the renewed outbreak of the conflict in Zaire, the Soviet Union and Cuba now must be discriminated against to be brought directly or indirectly proven to be involved in the 7 armed uprisings in Africa. They're not even subtle in their lies and propaganda. They're going to link all of the 7 recent successful liberation efforts in Africa to the Cubans and the Soviet Union. Some had no Cuban or Soviet aid. True indeed, the Soviet Union, thank God, socialism, the only government that has been helpful to the hopes and aspirations of people living in such miserable hell, have helped and are helping the Ethiopians, who the CIA has plagued with swarms of locusts that are eating up their remaining food, causing 1 million to die. There would have been more if it were not for Soviet food drop that's being conducted at this very hour. True, the Soviets assisted Angola, but the Angolan people are the ones that rose up and demanded their liberty. Not the Soviets. It is the people that are living under these hard, oppressed conditions that are yearning, paining to be free. Some of you will never relate to it because you've always had Father to provide your every need. You've never been in want, so you'll never relate to a mother feeling the anguish of her hungry baby starving to death inside her womb, and then have it starve after it's born in concentration camps that house over 1/2 million in one country alone, set up by U.S. aid, American aid, and supervised by U.S. military personnel that our tax dollars, every time we bought something, paid their salaries. You cannot relate to that, some of you, because Father has taken care of you so very well. News today has it that USA is backing Israel in its breach of promise of international law, USA is the greatest law violator in the world. It breaks its treaties with the Indians. It breaks its promises with blacks. Carter has broken every law. He has perjured himself. But Carter is not held responsible. Yet a black person that takes 2 pieces of bread, a person that takes a bit of food who's Indian, poor white, he goes to jail for years. But these liars on the international scene and national scene get by. It is a terrible testimony to the ignorance of the American people and their narcissism that clings on to life due to the opiate of religion that tells them they have a heaven to go to, so it doesn't matter how many injustices they endure here on earth. Anyway, Israel has violated the rule of law and turned over its conquered territories in South Lebanon to the outright phalangist Christian militia, a fascist outfit that is the minority in Lebanon because the Muslim population is the majority. In spite of protests by the United Nations and the United Nations commander, Erskine, from Ghana. That's the way it goes. U.S. uses the UN. UN has nothing it can do about it. U.S. flaunts the UN. Israel, Zionism flaunts the World Court, the United Nations, by violating their own agreement. June 13, they were to have withdrawn from the territory they moved in so bestially in an aggressive war, conquered and killing one whole village of 10,000 people, again with U.S. dollars, our tax dollars. It's hellish. But we need to think. We need to feel. We must not forget. The right-wing militia, the phalangist movement in northern Lebanon, have been set up by U.S. aid again, CIA intervention, and moved into an entire village, wiping out the remnants of the left, the Fanji family, the relatives of the former prime minister who was deposed from Lebanon, who was moderate left and would not be a stoolie, a puppet for U.S. imperialism. They're not satisfied that they killed him. Now they have killed his son and all of his remaining children as they swept through a whole town. A meeting has been called in Beirut to study the matter. Heavy international pressure is being brought on the USA to give accountability for what is going on in Lebanon, but USA always puts up their nose and gives the finger to policies of justice throughout the world. United Soviet Socialist Republics, the Soviet Union. Second person in the U.S. Embassy, one Martha Peterson, has been arrested by the Soviet police, found meeting with Zionist dissidents, passing canisters of poison and explosives under a bridge. Arrested along with her is an American businessman, also in violation of Soviet currency laws. This is a marvelous thing that the United States does with our tax dollars through its State Department, the miserable embassies that we've had to see visit here, these consuls and U.S. embassies. Here's a U.S. embassy, second person protocol in the State Department, arrested in the act. Even BBC has to admit she was caught in the act of passing canisters of poison and explosives. For who? Who in the Soviet Union is the USA now, openly and brazenly trying to blow up and poison to death? The Soviets charged that it was one of the cruelest forms of poison. Details as to the chemical components of the poison have not yet been released. Warsaw Pact leader, generally the feeler for peace and understanding, Prime Minister Ceausescu of Romania, is going to be visiting England today. He will be touring an aerospace factory. Crescescu has been known to be a troubleshooter, trying to bring peace to a troubled world, trying to negotiate new relations. Recently he was in China on behalf of the Warsaw Pact, perhaps to some slight avail. China, in its schizophrenia today, comes out and again attacks both superpowers for their insane hegemony that is leading the world to chaos. It is so very difficult to understand China. You would have to be a psychiatrist, but I told you I would give you all the news, good or bad. Moscow continues to state that China is unstable and that its policies is going to lead to a direct confrontation, indeed, with the superpowers, and China is going to be in the middle, said the USSR. If China does not stop meddling, it will bring nuclear war. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Hua says, right after that, what you would call a rather scorching indictment of both superpowers, in spite of Chairman Wang, who is now in Zaire, offering economic aid to that vicious fascist regime in Zaire. Peiping may think that there is something to be gained for the world's struggling peoples by bringing on nuclear war, but how they live with their pragmatic view and end justifies the means to such a degree that they can be on the side of puppet leaders of U.S. imperialism who oppress poor black people leaves something that defies the imagination, to say the least, and is a cruel distortion of Marxism. More properly, Marx did not mean, when he said that the end justifies the means, that one could use such means as the exploitation of poor people to achieve, in the finality, the liberation of the world from imperialist superpowers. And of course, Peiping's policies of the Third World have been brought to open ridicule and shame even by their last remaining ally, Albania, yesterday, that showed the absolute insanity and hypocrisy of their doctrine of three worlds, which you need to review. There will be people's rally tonight, and there will be testing. And I would be prepared, I would be in the library at every moment, trying to catch up on things as much as possible. Pravda and Izvestia, both headlines, accuse Peiping of jeopardizing world peace. 400 people have been arrested in New York. That's the way fascism is working now. 400 people were arrested in New York outside the United Nations for protesting against American arms. They were arrested for peaceful assembly. No news was even shed by the Voice of America or BBC as to how they could be arrested, because Senate Bill 1437 has not yet been passed by the House. As you know, it's 6869 there. Though it's expected to be passed, it leaves even wonderment in the minds of the commentators on how 400 people, all of them, they were every last one of them, rounded up and arrested and taken away. Brussels, the international conference to try to help the false economy, a government that does not even represent the Zairean people, continues to go on in its charade. More violence is outbreak in Zaire is noted. It is impossible, said the foreign minister of The Hague, or the foreign minister of Netherlands, Holland, for the U.S. and her allies to consider that Zaire will be able to be maintained in the long distant future as a government when it does not even represent 3% of the will of the Zairean people. Now that is criminal actions at the worst. It's like putting a gang, a mafia gang in charge of a couple of hundred in charge of San Francisco, and having the United States law, Attorney General, and President uphold their right to take over San Francisco, kill and murder whoever they wanted to, hang whoever they chose, shoot down as the dictator Mobutu Sese Seko did yesterday, 2,000 of his own soldiers. It's a strange world. Blacks arrested in South Africa. Gaborone, Gaborone. The South African regime has intensified its repression of the black majority population. You know, blacks outnumber whites there 40-1. Yet U.S. monopoly capitalism continues to pour its aid. Carter poured $457 million this first part of the year alone into that apartheid Hitlerite regime. Police arrested Zakes Mofokeng, assistant manager of the new weekly newspaper The Voice. Earlier this month, leaders of the AZANIAN People's Organization and the Soweto, SOWETO, Action Committee were arrested. The new black literary magazines, Staffrider, STAFFRIDER, and Donga, DONGA, were banned, and restrictions were placed on the South African Council for Higher Education, a private foundation which promotes black moderate education, not socialism, just education. USA monopoly capitalism that has bilked Africa does not even want black people to read or write. Brought to light even by the New York Times today that the CIA helped overthrow Nkrumah. First-hand intelligence sources reported that the CIA station in Ghana gave direct advice, support, and follow-through to the group of army officers who overthrew President Kwame Nkrumah. You know that is spelled Kwame, capital Nkrumah, in 1966. The celebrated nationalist leader, he wasn't even a socialist, led the independence movement and in 1957 made Ghana the first African country to emerge from European and U.S. imperialist colonialism. It is later suspected that the CIA effected a heart attack on the young Nkrumah while he was in Egypt. Government scandals in South Africa. Johannesburg, South Africa. A widening scandal involving a large secret fund maintained by the South African government's information ministry to prop up the regime's apartheid racist separation policies has presented the ruling National Party with one of its worst crises. The information ministry was charged last week with secretly donating money from the slush fund to U.S. members of Congress through its Washington lobbyist, Donald Dykhofer, Deieffoher. Congressman Philip Crane was one. John Dent and 8 other members of Congress have been accused of receiving campaign contributions from the secret fund, the fascist slush fund of the Union of South Africa's Vorster Nazi regime. In return, U.S. congressmen voted against the House resolution not to recognize the Transkei, a black homeland granted independence by South Africa in 1976. What has been done to the Congressman Crane, Dent, and others? Nothing. Law in USA has only meant cruelty to keep people down in slavery who are black, brown, poor whites, the undesirables. Colby admits Angolan cover-up. CIA Director William Colby conceded this week to charges made by a former agency official that the CIA did run a covert war, a secret war in Angola, and then lied to keep it secret. That it is true. Colby denied, however, that he misled Congress when he described the basic thrust of our program in Angola as being in the interest of the people. However, he was afraid to take oath and did state that the CIA, with our tax dollars, run a secret war and may even still be running a secret war under Admiral Turner, the new CIA head, who you know went to Senator Dick Clark of Iowa and asked him to cooperate in an effort to overthrow the elected government of Agostinho Neto in Angola. Even that was just 3 or 4 weeks ago. So the ex-CIA agent John Stockwell was found telling the truth. Stockwell charged that the agency, the CIA, planted false information with the U.S. newspapers, television, and radio, and had the outright cooperation of the major newspapers. Congress and the United Nations also were planted with false information by the CIA in coordinating and financing a propaganda campaign for the two fascist factions in Angola seeking to overthrow the popular movement for the liberation of Angola, the MPLA government. In other words, it's still going on, and the CIA is still using newspeople, and newspeople are still cooperating, newspaper magnates are still cooperating. Well, this gives you, I would gather, a certain rough idea of the news. Rough indeed it is. It's horrible to think that there is so much corruption going on in the name of law. You can't imagine. Perhaps the gravest news of the day, Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. U.S. Marines invaded there in 1965. An outright invasion with our tax dollars, because naturally all of the armed services and all government agencies in USA are supported by our taxes. We helped that war that killed tens of thousands and caused other tens of thousands to be arrested and put in prisons. Well, today it's been done again. The Marines maintained outright occupancy of, the Dominican Republic for a year, and then held a mock circus election. But now, the Dominican troops, backed by U.S. aid, seized the Electoral Commission headquarters amid widespread reports of a military coup to head off the victory that has been now held official by the left-wing presidential candidate Antonio Guzman. A source close to incumbent reactionary President Joaquin Balaguer said there had been a coup headed by the National Police Chief, General Niet Rafael Nivar Sejas. Guzman and other Dominican Revolutionary Party candidates are reportedly jailed at this time, held without bail or proper due process. How much do we have to hear to be inflamed in our motivation to build this community, to be inflamed with a passion to protect it, for socialist's sake to build it, instead of wasting every day again? Yesterday and last night I had to go right in front of your faces in the library while you were sitting there, trash laying around on the floor in that beautiful setting, the lovely aquarium where you can sit and peacefully read the news on the blackboard or listen to it reviewed and again so you can get it. See property broken, it breaks my heart. Food wasted, lack of care, lack of concern. Clothes, towels found out dirty, just grimy with dirt. No one bothers to pick them up. No one bothers to wash them out. We're murdering people because one day, in the not distant future, U.S. imperialism will come right out in the open, as it did this morning, by taking 400 people, arresting them just for public protest of the war effort, right out in front of the United Nations, right in front of all the representatives of the world's nations. They rounded up every man, woman, and child in that protest. So you're beginning to see the police state raw in the open. One other bit of disconcerting news is that with the Euro-communist revisionist sellouts in Italy coming out against the referendum, though the Red Brigade had made gains, there was a referendum on the ballot calling for the repudiation of the police state tactics that the National Police of Italy are allowed to employ, as well as a second referendum supporting the removal of tax dollars to the Christian Democratic right-wing party that governs Italy. But when the sellout revisionists who have become a part of the system, that's the danger of communists like Angela Davis, who live in penthouse apartments and have to have creature comforts, cosmetics, manicures, hairdressers, nice clothes, nice little sports vehicles. You cannot maintain those capitalist images. You cannot maintain those capitalist indulgences without getting caught up in the same and becoming a part of it. And that's what happened, as you know, as I gave you one commentary on Italy. The communists, the trade union leaders, first activists, then the government wooed them by little dinners and special stipends and investments, and so they invested a little bit of property, and so the leaders of the trade unions, the communist deputies, had too much property, so they sold their conscience to such a degree that they supported this police state referendum to continue this fascist police state law that gives the police the right to hold people without any time limitation. And the National Police of Italy have been noted for their cruel tortures. But it lost due to the Communist Party, revisionist, Communist Party of Italy, Euro-communist, European communist, who came out in support of the referendum. The other referendum almost passed, but failed also. This is the so-called reaction to the Red Brigade's people's execution of Aldo Moro, not from the capitalist, but from the revisionist, the communist in name only, the socialist in name only, who want to maintain creature comforts. And what they're really saying is, don't commit an act of armed struggle, and they write it off as terrorism because they don't want their little their little boat to be rocked any sooner than it has to. But death comes to all. Revisionist, apologist, opportunist, capitalist. Death comes to all. The only thing that makes nobility is in what we stand for. In life, you learn to roll with the punches and punch back until you win or lose. If you are indeed a true internationalist, if you are a true Marxist-Leninist, an avowed communist, dying will end a revolutionary struggle only. Dying, as I said, comes to all. Capitalist, opportunist, revisionist, whatever. Dying comes to all. But that dying then cannot be noble unless it is a revolutionary death. And that we are prepared for. With sensitivity, understanding, and the will to live, we will build internal strength. We will build every day as if we had a lifetime. If we have to meet a combatant, the enemy of the people, a class enemy, mercenaries, or whatever, on this eve or the morrow, we are certainly ready and able to meet revolutionary death, which is the only way you can get out of this world and get out of it without having to come back to it or have a stricken conscience. To stop struggling, I don't know how some of you have. Your indulgences here, your mundane, simple concerns of romance, while our people are in danger and the world is being hoarded into vast concentration camps, as I have just given you in the news, and hung to their death, hundreds and hundreds daily, in one little state alone. I don't know how some of you do it, how you stop struggling for people when they still can't determine their own destinies, when they still don't even have a decent life, where a mother has to feel her starving baby inside her womb. Tens of thousands of them in just 200 concentration camps in Rhodesia alone. To not struggle is to not exercise your decency to live as a human being, as the old Indian chief said in that movie we loved. To be a human being with concern for the revolution is the only thing that gives you purpose. I am married to you. I am married to communism because it's the only principle that can lift me up above the vermin of the field. I shall be married to that principle until the day I die, which would of course be easy for me to die. So I married you to exonerate that principle. What have you married? Have you married anything lately except your own superficial animal taste? And then even some of you try to tear down that which we build up. You try to cut your own throat to spite your face. Because when you waste food, break things, lose tools, tear up your property, the people's property, destroy linens, socks, don't take care of your clothes, you are foolish. You are making chicken that less frequent. You are making treats that less frequent, because I know you wouldn't listen to the appeal, some of you, that you are a murderer, because all the money we waste finally adds up day after day. It'll mean one life that we will not be able to get out from under the brunt of fascist terror when the chopping block finally falls. Please identify with the struggle. Please. Right now, 15,000 landless and small landholding peasants in Honduras have carried out a large-scale struggle without arms to seize their lands. In organized actions, peasants have seized large pieces of land, even though they're practically dead and weary from starvation, in protest against the government's failure. Yes, Honduran government backed up by U.S. imperialism, against the government's failure to distribute even decent portions among the impoverished, starving rural population. Try to identify with the struggle. The recent massive protest in Nicaragua against Somoza, the dread murderer, held up by U.S. monopoly capitalism and our tax dollars in USA for 44 years. People have protested the inhumane conditions in which imprisoned Sandinista National Liberation Front, FSLN, labor and student leaders are being held. How many are being held? 90,000. How much are they being rationed in food? A quarter of a cup of rice a day. Something to think about. Are a quarter of a piece of bread? That's something for you to think about while you eat well and get the best medical care and have a leader, a revolutionary father that says, when anyone's taken or arrested, you can't take them. I'll die first. I'll be tortured. Why don't you try to identify with the international struggle that is being mounted all over the world to save people from this kind of horrible, horrible poverty and inhumane oppression? Why don't you become concerned with the only thing that got out of the United States that can do something to rectify its wrong that just hours ago it did to the Dominican Republic by overthrowing, by direct intervention, the elected people of the Dominican, as I just gave you the news from Santo Domingo. Look at it just below the United States. Please, for socialism's sakes, awake out of your lethargy, out of your self-indulgence, and find a reason to exist other than for your own animal and sexual appetites. Please, in the name of decency, do so. Don't be murderers any more than you already have been. I love you. Peace.
Discussion makes everyone feel a participant of what's going on. And we're happy to be in Guyana, free from racism. And incidentally, that has been one of our projects of late. All the communities signing petition to back up the Guyana Chronicle's position that we want none of these people who have propagated apartheid systems to be settled in this continent. It's been enough, the injustice that they have brought in Namibia and Union of South Africa and in Zimbabwe or Rhodesia. Now there's talk of resettling these people into areas of South America. Now we are fully aware of the apartheid view. Of course there are people who are white in South Africa who no doubt don't share the view. But it is unfathomable to me that we would want to think, that any nation in South America would want to think of resettling these people when apartheid system is known for its absolute discrimination not only against black but all third world peoples. So that's one of our projects, and the senior group is leading that so that we can afford all the petition. I don't know, probably there'll be over 1,000 signers here in our community, as well as those that come in our free medical services to receive those, and on the weekend I know we 50, 60 a day. We are very concerned about this. We are grateful that our neighbor Venezuela, so we read in the Guyana Chronicle, and Brazil is not considering settlement of the apartheid people who are now being pushed out in the sense that Africa has declared its liberation, and USA as well as the socialist world has ostensibly stated that they are for the liberation of the African oppressed peoples. But we are busy people. Agriculture, of course, is our main concern. We're in the nursery area now, mostly planted to fix fruits such as golden apple, cerise, sapodilla, star apple, soursap, mummy apple, guava, sugar apple, gooseberry, mango, seaside grape, five fingers, almond, cashew. I could go on and on, Mike. Barbados cherries, papaya. No, that papaya. How tasty. It's just like USA apple pie when it's cooked. Not to mention the healing properties in terms of the skin, healing ulcerations that even has been proven so by surgeries done in Great Britain, where a kidney transplant was made successful by the healing effect of the skin on the post-operative procedure.
I notice, in line with the policy to use every inch of available ground for productive use, that there's a lot of interplanting going on in Jonestown. For example, I saw citrus planted amongst cassava coming down the road.
That's good for shade purposes on certain types of vegetables. It's very essential to have that type of interplanting. We have thousands of fruit trees in our nursery stock, and hundreds more that are now maturing in our orchards. And the seniors are taking the plantings and growing them in the yard. They make lovely shade, the scenic value, the beauty of it. There's no way to describe the beauty of a pineapple growing in your yard. Who wants a flower that you can't eat when you can look at a beautiful flowering pineapple? That's the same with the flowers of the banana and the cayenne and the fig banana and so forth.
The population of Jonestown is growing quite rapidly, with people coming over to live here permanently, and also with a number of recent births that we've had. What's being done to meet the housing and construction needs?
First, I'd like to say we're very thrilled at Guyanese applications. We're hopeful that we'll have a Guyanese couple moving in soon. We're all Guyanese, but we mean those who are native Guyanese. We're Guyanese by the wonderful privilege of adoption by this lovely country and government. We have a family, I think, 12 children and two their parents, and maybe an aunt, and then another grandmother coming in with some children. We were fortunate to have a birth that was very complex this week. You know the cesarean section, the history of that was saved by consultation through amateur radio with Georgetown and United States. It made world copy through the international press, and our medical facilities were praised. Our doctor was praised as a modern Dr. Schweitzer. We also had a near tragedy this week with a hemorrhage in the placenta, previous placenta. Dr. Walt or Marco Medical Net was here. He was fantastically impressed with our procedure. The doctor and the staff was able to change the location of the child, and the delivery was normal, and we had transfusions of all the community quickly volunteered B positive blood, and it went out A-OK. We work out in the fields. I'm much in the bush myself. I enjoy it so much. We have our Alaskan sawmills. We also use regular hand saws as much as possible. We're trying to not be dependent upon mechanization to the degree, or fuel to the degree that will cripple this great progressive third world economy. We hope to have a permanent sawmill going before long. We're presently negotiating on a boiler that will give us enough steam power to do the job. But I think we're not crowded. We're keeping up with it, in spite, as you mentioned, the rapidly increasing population and the number of young married couples that have had children. We have, I guess, probably an average of 2 births a week. I never lost a baby yet, and I'm thrilled about that. We have portable sawmills, and from our sawmill, we are in our furniture shops. We are making furniture that we hope to help our cooperative so that we can extend our free medical services and be of assistance to other cooperatives. We're making toys also that various stores in Guyana have said they will certainly buy at Christmas time. They like the quality of it. And I find working in agriculture working with wood, lumber, fantastically healthful. I was unhealthy as an administrator and church official and government official in the States. I was unhealthy. But when you get out with nature, the clear air, the remarkable beauty, the physical exercise, there's nothing like it in the world. People don't know what they're missing. The interior, in my opinion, Georgetown, one of the most beautiful cities I've ever seen. But the interior, there's no comparison with the capital in terms of the weather's a little cooler, it's more desirable. You have less mosquito problem. We have hardly no mosquitoes at all to deal with. People don't realize what they're missing by not getting into agriculture.
Thank you for your enlightening comments, Jim, and I couldn't agree more. We'll be back again next week at the same time. Until then, we'd like you to write us at our address in Georgetown, which is Post Office Box 893, or call us at our phone number 68787. On behalf of Comrade Jim Jones and all of us here in Jonestown, peace.